Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with thematic transformations and in this case, it's one of the greatest, most astonishing emissions of human genius ever. I'm not exaggerating. It's Schubert's Wanderer Fantasy. An incredible work that lots of people love, but few people quite understand how it relates to the Wanderer bit. And we're going to go into that. The Wanderer Fantasy was one of Schubert's, late works. It's in C major, his favorite key, which means all kinds of cool things happen, because for Schubert, the key of C major was like a blank slate. It's true of Haydn, too, on which they could do almost anything. It was fabulous. It was like neutral territory, and from there, all kinds of astonishing things happen. It's a fantasy in the sense that it's a series of transformations of a single theme, but it's in the form of, in this case, it would be a piano sonata. If it were orchestrated, it would be a symphony. It has 4 movements. They're all played continuously. They're all based on that same theme. And the model, what Schubert created in the Wanderer Fantasy was the model for the symphonic poem, as Liszt understood very, very well, because he turned the work into a piano concerto, very, very sensitively, I might add, quite splendidly. And just about Richard Strauss, all these tone poems that are based on the evolution of a single theme over, and that incorporate the 4 symphonic movements into one sort of gigantic structure and all that. Schubert does all of that. And he does it in this piano piece, which was so difficult when he wrote it that Schubert was unable to play it. The story goes that when he tried it out for his circle of friends, the Schubertniks, that would get together and listen to all of his stuff, because remember, he wasn't getting published and nobody cared about him as a composer, and it was really unbelievable. And he just wrote and wrote and wrote. But he got to the fugue at the end and couldn't do it. He just slammed the piano thing down and said, the devil can play it. He couldn't handle it. But it's one of those fabulous examples of how, inspiration does its own thing. And the really cool thing about the Wanderer Fantasy is that, let's see, I got to get my recordings here so that we have them and we can talk about them, about the Wanderer Fantasy, is that it's based on a song called The Wanderer. Actually, Schubert wrote a couple songs called The Wanderer, and finding this particular song is a little bit tricky. It's really very, very tricky, because it had more than one Deutsch number. Let's see, we have the complete Schubert edition here. It's listed as Deutsch 493, but I think it can also be Deutsch 480 something, 86, 87, something like that. But the important thing is to know who the poet was. The guy's name was I had a first name. His last name was Schmidt von Lübeck, the Smith from Lübeck. It's okay. And the actual opening of the Wanderer Fantasy that most people have heard before, if you've heard it at all, it's dum bum ba bum ba ba bum ba 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 da 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 dum, like that. It's this jolly, sort of galloping rhythm. You think it's a wanderer. Okay, yeah, it's the Wanderer. Well, no. The interesting thing that you need to know right away is that opening of the Wanderer Fantasy is not the theme that Schubert. It's a transformation of the actual theme that Schubert took from the song. It's not the way it appears in the song. And one of the things that drove me crazy when I was trying to figure out what was going on was, first of all, finding the right song, which is here in this Naxos Schubert edition. If you just want to go Schubert Lead Edition, Volume 11, the last track. That's the song. Track number 19. This is a much easier way to do it, quite frankly, than trying to look up Der Wanderer. It's not so hard because people identify it by its various Deutsch numbers. Now you can Google it and run it down pretty easily now. But back in the day, it was a bit of a project. It really was. And the actual theme that Schubert uses comes from the middle of the song, first of all, the second verse, actually, the second stanza, and it's a slow, dark, droopy, rather dismal song. I mean, it really is. It's the slow movement of the Wanderer Fantasy is where the actual tune from the actual song occurs, and nowhere else. Which really is fascinating because Schubert makes it sound as though the second movement is a transformation of the opening theme, and it's not. Everything else is a transformation of the slow parts theme. So that's the trick. That's what you got to get. So I mean, I have the words here. The words are absolutely terrible. I mean, tiny little words, but they're in the booklet here. Thank you, on Naxos. Sung, and we're going to hear this, sung by Hanno Müller-Brachmann and Ulrich Eisenlohr, piano. Hanno Müller-Brachmann is the bass baritone. So this droopy song, he sings in English. The sun seems to me here so cold, the flowers faded, life old, and what they say has an empty sound. I am a stranger everywhere. Depressing, isn't it? I mean, I can do it in German. Watch this. Die Sonne dünkt mich hier so kalt. Die Blüte welk, das Leben alt. Blüte welk. Is it welk? Yeah, the flowers faded. Und was sie reden, leere Schal. Ich bin ein Fremdling überall. Boo. Sounds even worse in German. Well, everything sounds worse in German. But the point is, that's the droopy actual tune. And here it is. And you have to remember that the theme is in the voice. The piano is accompanying with that rhythm, bum, 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 slowly, that we are familiar with. But the theme, the melody is in the voice. And when Schubert turns it, reproduces it in the second movement of the Wanderer Fantasy, the second part, because they're all attached, of the Wanderer Fantasy, he will reproduce the vocal melody in the keyboard as well. So here it is, the actual tune that serves as the basis for the Wanderer Fantasy.
Ich bin ein Fremdling überall.
Dark, isn't it? It's a dark. It's a wonderful tune. I mean, it's gripping, and it's full of pathos and eerie stillness and all that stuff. And so we need to hear, let's see, Yeno Yando, also on Naxos, performing the actual bit of the Wanderer Fantasy that quotes what you just heard. So here it is. Once you know that, you've basically got the key that unlocks the entire work. It's really very cool because the quotation in the Wanderer Fantasy is absolutely literal. So that's really good. And Schubert will create an entire movement or rounded sectional form around each version of the melody. So once we know that, we can go back to the beginning and listen to the first transformation of the Wanderer theme. And it's, like I said at the beginning, it's bold and it's jolly and it's as different as possible from the tune as we hear it in the slow bit, which comes second. So here's the opening. I just want to play you the first chunk where Schubert is making a completely different emotional universe out of that dark, gloomy, and very, very serious tune. Here's the opening. It's brilliant, it's fun, it's happy, it's great. And the other really interesting thing that's noteworthy is that from here on, that is the version of the tune that will be transformed. And you'll know it mostly because of that dum bum 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 bum. It's the bum bum, which kind of gets reproduced most dramatically in all of the transformations that follow. So you've got the opening thing, which will become a whole movement like sonata form and all that stuff. We don't have to get into it, but it's going to be a very large and bold and varied section based on that tune. Then we've got the slow part, which is really dark and incredibly beautiful and lyrical and suffused with Schubertian melancholy and all the stuff that people like to talk about. And then we have a scherzo, a light dance type thing, which has the most wonderful transformations of the theme. There are two of them. There's the opening, which is in a zippy triple time version of that tune, like that sort of. And then there's a second melody, bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum ba dum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum bum, which is really, evolved out of the opening rhythm. That bum 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 bum, because bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba bum ba, like that. Two versions of the theme, and these are transformations that don't stick to the actual melody. I mean, there is new material based on the elements of the melody. It's just incredibly brilliant and wonderful. And I'm going to play a big section of this because you've got to hear the way it works, the whole thing there. It's just phenomenal. So here's the scherzo. It's almost like the development section of the entire work, if it were like a sonata movement in a way. But of course, we've already had a couple other transformative elements in it, so you can't really call it that. But it's a really closely worked and thematically unified piece. It's astounding. I mean, and Schubert just did it. I mean, it's not like he said, "Oh, I'm writing symphonic poems," or "I'm going to invent something." It was where his inspiration took him. So here's the scherzo section. my goodness, that's marvelous. And so having done that, he needs something to wrap up the whole operation, and he does that with a fugue. And the actual melody becomes, of course, the subject of the fugue. Dum bum 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 da 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 da. You may notice that the version of the theme, which becomes the subject of the fugue, is first heard in the opening of the whole piece, but further on, and in the bass, in the left hand initially. In what you might call the development section of the first movement. You hear this da 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 da, that sort of thing. That becomes the fugue. It's a transformation of a transformation of a transformation, but easily relatable to the original theme in that dark, spooky, slow section. I'm going to play you a good chunk of the opening fugue as well, because this is the part that tripped up Schubert and got his fingers twisted into knots and all that stuff. And it's still very difficult. It's an extremely virtuosic work. And pianists love to play it because it has intellectual depth and emotional profundity and a wonderful element of virtuoso display. I mean, you get the whole package. It's all in here. So here is the fugue. And that will work its way back to a big, huge, wonderful climax and closing pages. It's just an incredible piece of music. And so there you have it. I mean, that's really, it doesn't take a lot of work to understand the Wanderer fantasy. It's all there. Schubert wants you to hear, the transformations, because the whole point is how splendidly wide-ranging the expressive potential is of the original theme that Schubert chose. But it's fascinating to see how he put it together and what the inspiration was, because you would never guess, I wouldn't guess, from hearing that song, that somewhat droopy and depressing song, that's actually quite slow and quite dark, that he would create this unbelievably powerful and brilliant and varied fantasy. And fantasy is the word, isn't it? Because it's fantastic in the literal sense of it, meaning just an incredible feat of imagination. So I hope you've enjoyed this little chat, and now go listen to the Wanderer fantasy all the way through, and listen to all of the other wonderful things that Schubert does with the basic idea of the theme from that song. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.